Hey, and we are live. Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us on today's Shopify Q&A. Really delighted to be joined, as per last week in our clubhouse, by Jay and Danny from Launch Online. Hi, Jay and Danny. How are things? Can you hear us all okay, Jay and Danny?
Yeah, everything's good. Good our end.
Good, thank you. And Shimona, hello. Thank you for joining us.
Hi, great to be with you again.
And James, hello too. Now, before we dive in, folks, I'm just going to do some intros or ask for some intros to give people context of why we're here today and our specialisms. So, Jay, I'm going to start with you and the Launch Online team. Please, just 15, 20 seconds about you guys, what you do for the benefit of our audience today.
Hi, guys. I am the founder of Launch Online. We're a paid media agency that specializes in ambitious advertisers. And a lot of our clients are selling e-commerce through Shopify.
Thank you, Jay. And Danny, obviously the same goes for you guys as well. But James, let's come over to you at the Armoury. What is your guys' specialism?
Hi, we are the Armoury. My name is James Davey. I'm the Marketing and Strategy Director here. We are a strategy, creative and marketing house specifically for e-commerce, retail and food and beverage brands looking to make the most of their online scaling, basically. Thank
you, James. And before I come over to you, Shimona, just a shout out to Lisa Amlani that's dialed in all the way from Toronto. Hello, Lisa, and thank you so much for joining us. But Shimona, over to you. Please tell us a little bit more about yourself.
Awesome. Hey, Lisa. We've met before. My name is Shimona. I'm the Managing Director for Shopify EMEA. And of course, Shopify is an entrepreneurship platform where we provide businesses and entrepreneurs of all sizes the ability to reach their merchants wherever they may be, while providing them all of the back-end solutions to run their businesses in a seamless way.
Thank you, Shimona. Well, let's get to it. We've got about an hour and I'm really keen to ask you all these questions that we've had sent in. For those that are tuning in live and perhaps haven't had a chance to answer the question yet, please put it in the live chat. We will get through as many of those as we can and obviously ask the panel as much as we possibly can today. So, folks, to start with, obviously, last week we got the news from the government that we finally have a route out of lockdown. And my first question, I'm going to start with you, Shimona, is actually as we prepare to come out of lockdown in the UK, how do you see retail shaping up over the next 6 to 12 months?
Yeah, retail is changing and it's changing fast. And that's something that we've seen over the last 12 months, right? And the trends that we saw driving retail over the last few years, that direct-to-consumer, digital transformation, continued movement to omni-channel, that really just got accelerated by COVID. So none of these trends that we've seen continue to emerge over the last 12 months are changing. We're not going back, we're just continuing to move forward. 2030 really just came forward for us. So as we come out of lockdown, first, I'm so excited for us to reignite the high street. And this isn't about, right, the death of the high street or it's online. It's not binary. This is actually about a complete experience that we're creating for customers. We saw 150 million people try online shopping last year for the first time. And so what we're learning is that people are getting used to it. They're figuring out how to buy essentials online. They're learning and finding new ways to engage and discover brands and create relationships with brands and communities. And so moving forward, what I'm seeing is continued need for authenticity from brands and the need to build relationships to, to help consumers discover them wherever they are, whether that's social, whether it's online, wherever it is, where it's offline. Improved experiences are going to be really, really key, whether again, online or offline, and finding new creative ways digitally to create experiences for those merchants, whether again, like I said, it's pop-ups offline, or, again, rich experiences through AR, VR and things like that. So fierce competition, the need for simplicity and really great experiences. This is going to be a really fun 12 months, actually.
Well, all I would say is good luck to James and Jay and Danny that have got to follow that. But let's go over to you, Jay and Danny. Is there anything you'd like to add to that point? Is there anything?
Yeah, I'd like to add in the fact that that I don't know if you just saw a small child in the background there, but there's going to be some shifts changing just even in the next few days. School's going back on Monday. We are also moving seasonally. Mother's Day last year was the first kind of national holiday, or not national holiday, but occasion where people had to buy online, or we'd gone into lockdown at that point, and people for the first time that was like their go-to place. They had to shop online. What will be interesting as we come out of lockdown and people are able to return to the shops, how much of those behaviors will be will search volumes online go down? Therefore, competition increases because those brands are advertising heavily. So it will be interesting to see how those brands that pivoted from bricks and mortar to more of an online presence are able to then balance out their marketing plans to cover both the bricks and mortar and online.
Now, James, I'm afraid you've got the real graveyard slot when it comes to this question. Is there anything possibly that you can add to this point? If not, I'll give you first dibs on the next question.
Unlikely, but I think I'm hoping that we'll see, as we, in the more immediate term, I think what we'll see is a rush back to the high street. People have been starved of engagement. They need enrichment in their life. That it's a chemical thing, isn't it? The dopamine and the kind of the chemicals in your brain of that. I really need to touch and feel something. I need to go and see people. So I think we're going to see quite a large push to the high street. Whether retailers will use the digital channels effectively to drive that footfall to their high street, I think is something, because I think most retailers, Jay and Danny, it would be great to get your thoughts on this throughout this morning around, do we think retailers are going to use these digital channels to enrich their footfall? Because many don't. The other thing I think we'll start to see is possible discounting. So stores have had a lot of stock tied up in their stores. It's expensive to do what we call backhauling, so bringing it back out of stores into a warehouse for e-commerce. So therefore, I think we are going to see some quite reasonable or heavy discounting. And it also ties in with kind of the mid-season sale that traditionally happens. As Jay said, we're in this transitional period for product. So we'll see old stock going out and new stock starting to come in. The other thing I think we'll see is that we'll see a drive towards experience. And I think we'll talk about this hopefully a little throughout this morning, that, lots of people have discovered new brands for the first time online. And actually, when they visit the high street, lots of those brands aren't there because they're more, smaller, more distinct kind of makers. Street might actually appear a little bit lackluster and a little bit vanilla for some brands. So those brands are going to have to kind of dig in and really create a bit of an experience. So I think local is going to be quite interesting.
Now, folks, I've just had our first question in, and it comes around the misconceptions around Shopify. Of course, today is really focused on Shopify, and the beauty of having 4 different experts from different disciplines means that hopefully we can give a really well-rounded response. And so the question is around, what are the common misconceptions of Shopify, particularly for those in the UK and European merchants? And certainly from a development point of view, we see that actually people are worried that maybe your cart abandonments and some of the really rich features within Shopify are actually all added extras and they come at a cost. And as we know, a lot of this stuff is built in as opposed to many other platforms. James, from your kind of consultancy and design point of view, I'll start with you this time. What are the misconceptions that you guys see?
I think the major thing we see is that people consider Shopify to be a baby platform, or historically has seen it being a baby platform because they're aware of the big names in the market, and Shopify is one of the biggest names in the market. Let's be honest, but they often classify it within a certain tier of e-commerce platforms and not alongside some of the more legacy what we'd call enterprise platforms. But Shopify Plus and Shopify Core, if I can call it that, Shimona, gives us the ability to stretch people from a startup all the way through to an enterprise business, at scale and pace. And I think that's one of the biggest misconceptions. You've got brands such as Gymshark and, really massive brands sitting on Shopify Plus as a platform that are delivering multiple hundreds of millions of dollars and pounds through that platform day in, day out, without the detriment of site speed, scale, flexibility, ability to trade. So for me, that's one of the biggest misconceptions we see. The other is the flexibility. People talk about Shopify's theme being a theme engine. It's not. It's just a language within which we can create any experience, especially with Shopify's move in recent years to open up what in the industry is being talked around headless commerce. So therefore using Shopify as a core platform to then enable you to raise that information out into a different platform if you so wish. But ultimately the theme engine within Shopify isn't restrictive at all. It is as open as it can be, and you can build any experience within it you wish with the core data sitting within the platform. So I think for me, they're the two core elements we see as misconceptions.
James, thank you. Jay, I'm keen to see from your and Danny's perspective in terms of driving traffic. Danny, maybe I'll come to you on this one. What are the misconceptions that you guys see? Maybe not involved in, oh, can it do this bit of functionality? Can it do that? But in terms of integrations into social channels, or perhaps the way it integrates with the Google Shopping feed, etc.
Yeah, I think the same applies for what James said about the fact that people looking at it or like taking that first step into the online and e-commerce side of it, thinking, right, this is where I want to be in 10 years time, but is Shopify the right platform? Is it too small for my, like, I will go to Magento, I will go to somewhere else, and 3-5 years in, they end up changing and swapping, and that's what we're seeing at the moment in time is companies moving from that other platform. The ability to be able to scale at growth as well, I think is not necessarily a misconception. I think it's underwhelmed that people don't see it as the opportunity to get that scale and get that growth. We've got a client at the moment in time that is doing that and looking at Australia and America at their growth, and it's great that it is easy to be able to just do that. Had they been on another channel, it might have been slightly difficult and more, and not as easy and as laid out as we would have seen. So yeah, that's probably where I'd sit from the paid element.
Danny, thank you. I just I've got a message from Giovanni. Thank you. He says he absolutely agrees on those points, James. And I hope that if you do have questions, guys, please do keep sending them in, and we'll get through as many as we possibly can. I'm going to go to another question we've had from the audience, which is around the big push back to the high street. Should companies still look to explore this buzz term of omni-channel, or actually do we need to solely focus on the in-store experience? Now, I know last week when we were on Clubhouse, we talked about people buying into brands and their story, not just necessarily the product. So that seems a perfect point for us to start with this. And James, I'm going to come to you first, being from that branding background. What are your thoughts on kind of brands selling the story and the kind of vision behind it, not just the product itself?
So I think there's this amazing seesaw in businesses around brand versus commercial. And it's very, very, very difficult to balance that seesaw in terms of getting the right balance between a showcase of a site or actually to work through, to be a till in your store, because ultimately your e-commerce store is there to be a till as well as a brand experience. So I think omnichannel is incredibly important because people buy from brand, they don't buy from a channel. So therefore, we should always look to give them the right experience and open up as many channels as we can, which are relevant to our customer. If we're an over 65 audience, then TikTok might not necessarily be the right channel, but for an under 20s audience, absolutely should be on that tick list of how do we make sure our product and our brand and vision is in those channels. But we need to deliver and make sure we give time to the channels where our customers will shop, versus saying, well, actually, e-commerce has grown massively over the last year, so let's invest all our efforts into e-commerce and forget that we have a number of high street stores that are one of the best ways of demonstrating our brand experience for physical interaction. And I think omnichannel for me is helps deliver that. It's a dirty word in our office. I have now got to put 20 quid in a jar somewhere. But it is around that join up of customer data as well. So being able to join up that customer reference with product and the experience, I think, will be where brands have to focus on omnichannel as a deliverable.
James, thank you. I'm going to come to Jay next, and then I'm going to come to you, Shimona, to talk about the recent events with social commerce and the exciting news you guys have got with TikTok. So stay tuned for that. But Jay, just add a little bit more context to that last point, please.
Yeah, I love the fact that James sees omnichannel as a dirty word. I mean, the fashion in digital marketing, which, by the way, is just marketing. I think even just the term digital marketing is now, it's wrong to silo it off from just general marketing. This kind of reliance over the last 5 years from digital marketers saying, well, we can prove our return on investment. We can prove that Facebook has generated this and PPC has generated that. And ultimately that, we're moving now to a place where we won't have full visibility on our data. cookie compliance, with iOS 14, with the removal of third-party cookie tracking, this cookieless world that we're going to be moving to. We've got to stop relying on this precise reporting, which was never accurate anyway, of what channels are contributing to overall sales. And we need to go back and stop being lazy marketeers, look at the customer experience, look at how those brands are delivering. And is the product of the moment? Is it what customers need? Rather than PPC has delivered X this month. So I think it's going to be a really, really interesting time with all of these elements coming together over the next few years.
Go, Jay. I could really hear the passion coming out there. Love that. I was like, go on. Guys, I'm going to come over to you, Shimona, for the excitement around this new TikTok announcement. Before I do, I just wanted to acknowledge our good friend Matt Wilkinson, who's just asked around configurable products. And I'll come back to that, Matt, as soon as we've gone through this social commerce update. But I've actually got butterflies as if this is a new announcement, but I know it's a week or so old now. But Shimona, social commerce, really exciting announcement with Shopify and their partnership with TikTok. Perhaps you could just elaborate on that.
You know what? I still get butterflies too. This is such an exciting announcement. Again, the landscape of retail has changed so quickly. James, actually, I've got a fun fact for you. TikTok did a user assessment across Europe. There are 100 million users in Europe. And it actually turns out over 2/3 of the users are over 25 years old. So we all like fall to that misconception that it's, TikTok is just teenagers, but actually it's community of all ages that are discovering brands, which is really great. And that leads to this incredible partnership that we've got with TikTok, which we've now expanded to 14 more countries beyond the US, around the world, including 5 in Europe. And I'm so excited about it because we are now providing European merchants with access to those 100 million active, highly engaged TikTok users. I'm so pumped for the merchants in EMEA who have access to this amazing sales channel now. We talked a little bit about measurability a moment ago, Jay, but what we're doing is providing all of those great TikTok ad and content creation tools right natively in the Shopify admin, which makes it so easy for merchants to create the content, their call to action, upload the products and shoot it over to TikTok, and then actually be able to measure results as well, which again, we know is important for them as well. And so this is exciting because what we're finding through our research and TikTok's research is that people are discovering brands on TikTok and social commerce in general. In fact, I believe, I'm just pulling up a stat here, TikTok had done a recent industry study. 83% of those browsing TikTok say that seeing a trending content has inspired them to make a purchase. So think about it, TikTok didn't even exist, 5 years ago? And here it is now, 100 million users in Europe alone, active eyeballs, engaged eyeballs, converting eyeballs. And I'm so excited to be able to bring this to Shopify merchants. This is, again, such a game changer.
Shimona, thank you. Jay and Danny, anything to add to that point? If not, I'll go on to the configurable products piece.
I mean, for me, it just plays into a wider piece of being creative with your content, of being able to harness the power of video. I mean, there's no question, TikTok, YouTube, Reels, Instagram Lives, that all the of video and how it can influence this. And I think that it's particularly for some of the SMEs have always been reticent about what the investment of video is. And actually now this authentic content, this user generated content, we're seeing a much more traction and return on investment from adopting video, that barrier of having slick content just isn't there anymore.
Jay, thank you. Guys, I'm really keen to try and get through all these questions. I'm going to come to Matt's question on configurable products. Please do keep your questions coming in. Lisa, I've just seen one from you as well, which I'll come to after another one we've had in, etc. So please keep them coming, guys, and I'll do my best to manage these. Now, James, having worked closely with you guys over the past 18 to 24 months, we've often seen Shopify merchants trying to work with configurable products. Yeah. And it's often said that perhaps if Shopify did have an Achilles heel, it might be configurable products. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I suppose there's a big difference between product variants and configurable products. Now, no single e-commerce platform out of the box offers configurable products. So in terms of the mass customization of multiple elements, so the likes of Magento, for example, does do what they call configurable products. They're not, they're just product variants. So I think it is something that 99% of e-commerce platforms don't offer out of the box. So therefore you have to apply a layer to it that then allows you to parse and configure that product with infinite detail. So, you know, in Matt, obviously, we know reasonably well from the configuration of a piece of furniture, for example, adding in particular cushions, choosing the size, choosing the length of the sideboard, for example, that is effectively a variant. When you want to layer products on top, you're configuring that product, which then means you have to have the SKU data in Shopify to pull that into. So it's any particular e-commerce platform does struggle with true mass customization or configuration, but ultimately it really comes down to having the data in the system. You can always come back to that one SKU that is a combination of those products. I suppose the only other piece to mention there is that lots of businesses overcomplicate what they class as a configurable product. So they often want to have every minute little item within a SKU. You don't have to do that. You can have a base SKU and then add other products as separate SKUs to it to do exactly the same thing as if you're trying to mass customize one item. And that is a much more effective and easier way of delivering and also fulfilling those products in the back end of the system in terms of managing stock and all those kind of flows. So a little bit of a verbose answer, but hopefully that gives a kind of a conception.
I just want to jump in here as well, James, on that. Like the configurable products from a Google Ads point of view as well. When you start them looking at the Merchant Center and running the feed and Google Shopping, being able to just have that one singular product does help. Like to show rather than having the multiple and the variations of price points. And we've got a couple of clients that have configurable products, and it is a bit of a pain where we are in some listings for results, we will show 50% more expensive than a competitors, but then some searches will show 20% more cheaper than other competitors, and it's all based around which of the configurable products. Is it one with 8 different prints in terms of branded products? Is it an umbrella with 8 panels with 10 different print colors on it compared to a singular? Like it just throws it out. And the whole aim in the ad side of it is just to get that user to the website, like the experience of the website and the price point, pull them in, and the image, and making sure it's as good as possible, getting them to the site. Then the site takes over to the conversion. So yeah, I just wanted to throw my 2 pence worth in on that side of it to sort of back you up on that back.
Danny, that is bang on. Thank you. I'm keen to come to you, Shimona, to talk really around the platform philosophy and maybe the iOS of commerce. Perhaps if you can add some light from that side, then that will hopefully bring this conversation full circle, and then we can go on to the next topic.
Yeah, absolutely. I come back to actually where James just started, which is there's no platform that is, fully configurable outside the box. I think the key is, as we at Shopify think about how we are building our platform for the future, we've got over 1.7 million merchants using Shopify today. And there is so much variance and complexity in those merchants, from size to verticals to, complexity to industries to how global they are. And so if you can imagine trying to potentially build a one-stop shop platform that somehow met the needs of 1.7 and growing very quickly, it's virtually impossible. Where we actually find there to be more power is actually in empowering our ecosystem to build off of the extensibility and flexibility of the platform. We know how fast e-commerce is changing. We know how fast the needs of merchants will continue to change. And so we actually view ourselves as, how do we make sure that we're the right platform for developers? How do we make sure that we are exactly what you just said, Nathan, like the iOS of commerce, where now we can continue to build and enable developers and agencies to be able to build, and partners to be able to build off of that platform to create those incredibly specific needs of all of the merchants that we want to be able to empower now and as they grow and into the future. Our we know that power is consolidating in tech today, and you've got those that own the eyeballs of consumers and want to charge rent. What we're trying to do actually is lift ourselves out of that. How do we make it easy across the board for merchants and consumers to connect? And that's going to come through our partner ecosystem. That's where the power really lies for the millions of merchants and entrepreneurs that face any friction in their growth.
Shimona, thank you. Matt, I hope that answers your question. I hope you found that useful. Just like to encourage everyone to keep your questions coming in. This is a fantastic opportunity to have this Q&A, all things Shopify. So please do keep your questions coming in. And Lisa, I'll come to your question next as soon as I've just touched upon this last piece, which is around the shift to e-commerce has seen a rise in the cost of acquisition of customers. How is this affecting online ad campaigns, and where should brands be prioritizing? And I think this is perfect for Jaye and Danny. And so I'm going to start with you, Jaye, on that.
So it was really interesting. Like I said, it was about this time last year that people were realizing that, well, in fact, did we even realize at this point? But within March, we were going into lockdown, this need to buy online. And it was those advertisers that were very, very quick, and businesses that were very quick to pivot, that perhaps had their wholesale decimated and were able to suddenly shift to this direct to consumer. We had clients who had just maybe a percentage, maybe 20% of their sales were direct to consumer before, and suddenly they were needing to move to be 100% direct to consumer. There was a lovely period of time where the big brands hadn't really adapted yet, and the cost per acquisition was actually quite low. The CPCs we were seeing within Google ads, within Facebook ads, it was low, and there was this wonderful moment where new customers were being driven to these websites, and the small guys could compete. Over a period of time, our prediction came true, which was that the big brands then started to pivot more online. They took that out of home advertising. They drove that all online, and the competition became stiffer. And Black Friday was when we really saw how aggressive the Facebook real estate, the Google Shopping had become. And that's when the smaller retailers perhaps got their first taste of the fact that the big boys were now playing too. As time has gone on, what we saw in January was that Facebook cost per click, we are seeing them higher, more competitive. You've got big brands like Dove competing with small eco-friendly brands, all on the same feed, and that has made it difficult for some customers. But going back and taking a step back and making sure that you are really understanding your brand story, you're communicating that, and that you're not just trying to get your sales through one channel, through just paid advertising, but instead, when those new customers do come in, you keep them engaged, you keep them loyal, you keep communicating with them, and you turn them into brand advocates. You just can't now rely on one channel marketing.
No.
Jaye, thank you. Guys, I'm going to actually go straight to the next topic because I see Giovanni and Lisa have both got a very similar question. So I'm going to ask both questions, and then I'm going to come to you, James, on this one first. Lisa said, how will D2C brands retain customers that will be heading back to stores when they're used to traditionally shopping? And Giovanni's kind of echoed that to say, how are D2C brands operating primarily online on Shopify going to be able to maintain that interest online, especially with stores reopening across a number of countries? And so, James, let's start with you, then I'll come to Shimona, and then I'll go to Danny on this one.
Fab. So I can probably start with don't put all your eggs in one basket. So as we said before, your customers shop through multiple channels and through multiple touch points, because that's just the nature of human life. So I would say if you're purely a direct consumer brand, then try and understand whether it's through surveys or what we call voice of the customer within our e-commerce excellence model, within our 7 pillars. Really try to understand why those customers in this time you have before the stores open, and there's still quite a few weeks, ask them why they chose you versus other brands online. Why did they come to you as a business? Was it around your approach to sustainability? Was it your approach to the product quality? Was it the way you demonstrated an emotional connection with that customer through the way you presented your brand through digital media or on site? So therefore, you can then understand how, as you move out of lockdown, how you might need to dial that up or start to dial elements down because customers are saying, well, I'm just really interested in great service for delivery and great price points and value. So that's one thing. The other thing is starting to think around whether there are avenues and channels you can start to move your product into. So if you are a physical retail location and direct to consumer, then you can obviously utilize the benefits of something such as Shopify POS and Shopify as a platform, if we talk about platforms specifically, to leverage that customer across multiple channels. But if you're working with wholesale, then wholesale in its own right as a single channel is quite difficult to manage and quite uncomfortable. But starting to use things such as marketplaces and wholesale to put you into other people's physical locations around where customers are buying into your store. So use your online data to say, actually, lots of our customers are buying around Birmingham, for example. So therefore, we probably need to go and find ourselves a couple of stockists in Birmingham that fit with our customers' demographic and what they really want to do to put our product where they can see it. So therefore, it just builds that relationship. So use it as a springboard to your channel strategy, not as an isolated hub.
Shimona, I get it's always difficult to follow James, but yeah, anything to add to that?
Nothing on the research on your customer's buying journey and how they're discovering you. That was excellent, James. I think the key thing to add is again, this isn't a moment in time, right? Direct to consumer didn't become a thing in the last 12 months. Direct to consumer has been a growing trend for the last, 5 or 6 years. And all we did was accelerate that trend over the last 12 months. So this isn't a one-way shift to direct to consumer out of necessity over the last 12 months. This was a trend that was really just accelerated. And what we've seen with Gymshark and Lounge and incredible brands that have already been building direct to consumer online, they've done exactly what James has said. They've really deeply understood their customers' buying journey, which is something that you can do when you're a direct to consumer and you have all that rich customer data. They've been leveraging that to figure out, again, where to communicate with them, how and when. Betsy Johnson does a really great job of this. If you look at the channels, Facebook, there's call to actions on their online page. There's great offers right up front. On their Instagram page, it's beautiful, rich content. It's because they understand their customer and where they're going and how they're engaging with them. So take advantage of all those things, as James said, and then amplify that. For those that are strictly direct to consumer, many of them are starting to think about what that looks like in an offline world. But what I love about those brands is that they're understanding and realizing that offline, brick and mortar, high street, whatever you want to call it, they're using it as an additional marketing channel as well, right? And not just a distribution or sales channel. And so it's like this extension of understanding that customer. So just remember and keep in mind, there's not some massive shift that's going to happen just back to brick and mortar. Direct to consumer is here and here to stay. And that's because we have the opportunity as brands to just so deeply understand our customers when we own that data and we own that journey.
Oh, Danny, I feel so sorry for you. I'm coming to you last, mate, and I'm sorry. I'll make sure you get first dibs next time around.
Cheers. Just like everything that James and Shimona have said is absolutely kind of where I'd be going with it anyway. And looking at that, yes, the buying behavior and the journey online has changed. When you take offline away from it, like how do you know what your customer does when they come into store? How do you know where they, in a department store, which areas they go into, which they don't, why do they leave one area and go to the other page? All that data, if you think about what we have got, which is the last 18 months of amazing data, the amount of traffic that has come to your website, for you to actually be able to get better, make better decisions on you as a brand, what your website should look like, where you want to go with your identity and what other products may come out of that. Then obviously leveraging the fact that you may then think, right, a pop-up store is needed in Birmingham, a pop-up store is needed there. People, yes, there's going to be a flood back to the high street. People are going to want to go back to high street, great. But it's not going to stop them searching online and looking for that product or looking for that need of what they look for. It might increase it, and the sort of high street reopening, we may see an uplift in conversion, we may see a drop in online conversion actions, but the uplift in sort of the research phase, buying a sofa, many people want to sit on a sofa before buying it, but still not going to stop them like searching through 10 different stores, seeing what's out there and doing that. So, Google shopping as well, and all the paid side of it, and then thinking everything else, like Shimona said about Gymshark. They understand their customer. They've put it on all the right places, and it's having that sort of even mindset across everything and going, right, these are all the areas we need to be as a brand. This is how we reach our customer, and making sure the content is right and the product is good. You can't fail.
Guys, we're about just over the halfway point, and before we go any further, I just wanted to give a shout out to our next Clubhouse and LinkedIn live session, where we'll be talking about the benefits of moving from Shopify Advanced over to Shopify Plus. And you look at some of the features with Shopify Flow, with Launchpad, with the kind of access to customizing the checkout, the 10 stores, the list goes on, and that's going to be a great session. But just a reminder to everyone listening today, the first of those is on Clubhouse on the 26th of March. And the next is a week later, actually 6 days later, on April 1st, where we'll be back here on LinkedIn Live. Similar panel, similar range of experts giving our insights into the benefits of moving from Advanced to Plus. So make sure you join us for that. Thank you, Giovanni, and to Lisa, and I hope that last point has answered those questions. We've got a small one here from Nagila, who's asked about Twitter and their testing of commerce within feeds. And James, I'm just going to drop this one with you and then essentially move on, because I'm conscious that we've only got 25 minutes left and lots to cover. But Nagila's question is around, I've seen that Twitter is now testing commerce within feeds. How do we see this developing? And are we actually going to approach a point where we're getting overwhelmed with customers with too many channels?
Well, I think there's an amazing person. If Nagila, if you ever get the chance to follow or read some books by a guy called Martin Lindstrom, he's really, really incredible to go and look at. He worked with Apple and Coke back in the early 90s and noughties around the absorption of multiple channels at once. And we've moved from people needing to be shopping within 3 or 4 channels to the need to almost be receiving 18 to 20 touch points from a brand before they start putting that brand into their mindset of considering them to purchase from. So we almost need to be seen in multiple channels, but they've got to be the right channels, not just the wrong kind of people that we're targeting. The other piece, I suppose, from that is that the great thing about what Twitter are doing and TikTok are doing and the integration Shopify has with Instagram and Facebook, for example, we're putting product and e-commerce into the channels they're comfortable with. So we're not trying to rip them away from their channels and put them into an online store that ultimately that it disjoints their flow of where they are with that day. So the thing I'm finding massively exciting is the move from the Chinese mentality at the moment of live streaming, live shopping through social channels is moving westward, that we're starting to adopt it into our space and start to understand that customers like to shop where they want to shop. So let's make sure we're where they are.
Thank you, James. And I've just had a comment in to say, is James the most intelligent person on the planet? And I would say he's probably got to be right up there. Shimona, I see you've got a little hand up there.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that was amazing, James. So insightful.
Guys, I'm going to come to the next question, which is around how can brands re-engage, particularly with those customers that have picked up over the last year, to enhance that lifetime value. And I think the best person to start with this is actually going to be you, Jay.
So it's been really interesting because these brands that have picked up new customers, they found new customers through lockdown. This drive for people being online, and it's, are those people going to buy from you again? How do you get them to buy from you again? It's a great opportunity, and it's something that you've just probably starting to run out of time to work out. So get on to it now. But I think Google had a stat that it's something like 76% of people who bought from a new brand in lockdown aren't sure that they will buy from that brand again. And one of the ways that we've seen businesses pivot, I love to use the example of Oppo ice cream. Oppo Brothers is an ice cream brand. They sell kind of low calorie but delicious ice cream, and they've also got vegan ice cream. And one of the ways that they tried to get new customers, they had to pivot. They had a whole load of wholesale orders that were cancelled in lockdown 1 when the sales teams at supermarkets were having to prioritize, bread and milk, and so they had all of this ice cream that they needed to shift quickly. And they set up a very, very basic Shopify store. In fact, they should have come to you, Nathan, because they perhaps needed it to be better than it was, but they had like 48 hours to do this. So they put up this Shopify site, and those customers that found them, they encouraged them to tell their neighbors about it. So this idea, we were all going out onto our doorstep to clap the NHS. This idea that we were becoming more local in our approach and adopting kind of a community mentality. What they did is any orders that you placed, they would put in an extra tub of ice cream in a special box so that you didn't have to, have cross-contamination and everything. And you would leave that little box on your neighbor's doorstep for free. And the idea was, it had a nice hashtag, that you would just keep passing the love down the street. And it really helped. It helped, first of all, for the brand to create a warm and lovely feeling around themselves. It created social media conversations. And it got to the point where they even had a Instagram filter that you could have with your favorite Oppo ice cream flavor. And it really took off. And this company that had not been focusing on direct to consumer suddenly was able to adapt and make that go further. Now, how do they keep those customers re-engaged? Well, interestingly, now that I'm on their email list, because I was one of the people that my neighbor gave me a nice pot of ice cream. It's now my son's favorite ice cream. And mine too, but I like all ice cream. And what they're seeing is that the email is now their best channel, because they were able to get that email data from all those new orders, and they're really working hard to keep through email those new customers engaged, and that just helps extend the lifetime value of that customer and made that initial investment into direct consumer much more affordable.
Jay, thank you. And I absolutely love the story of Oppo ice cream. That is one of my favorites. James, it seems that we've had a comment in from Nagila, which you've kindly answered, saying thank you. You're certainly popular on this flow at the moment. And therefore, I'm going to come back to you around concerns around security coming out as a number one in many surveys conducted with customers and business leaders. From your experience and from what you've seen, how is Shopify aiding merchants in maintaining data integrity? Because, again, this seems to be something that crops up time and time again. And actually, hopefully you can shed some light on that.
So I think, going back to one thing, I just need to clarify, I'm far from the most intelligent person on here. I've just broken a lot of stuff along the way, so it's fine. The one thing I'd say around security, okay, let's look at that from two sides. One is PCI compliance. So what that means is a business's need to provide secure level of encryption around customer and card data, for example. Shopify and Shopify payments sit in what's called PCI level 1 compliance. So that is the same level of compliance that Marks and Spencer's, B&Q, and the biggest retailers in the country legally have to meet. You as a small retailer or a mid-sized retailer, you sit in that tier immediately by using Shopify as a platform and Shopify payments. So that's one thing that's really important. The second thing is GDPR compliance here in the UK and obviously within Europe. Shopify very, very quickly and was ahead of most of the competition. There are still some e-commerce platforms that do not cater for GDPR compliance here in the UK in the right way, that you can remove customers on customer request. You can delete all of their data from your platform, and you can very, very quickly click a button and export that entire customer data history with you as a customer, with you as a brand. So as a data compliance officer, they're the two things you have to be able to demonstrate that you can do. One, very quickly, and two, with complete robustness. And so from a security level perspective of customer data and payments, I think we're covered. On the last point, in terms of what we'd call hacking protection, let me sum it up in terms of that. So security levels. I'm not an expert on hacking or data security. I've got a friend in the Bahamas that absolutely is, ridiculously. Another story there another day. But ultimately, that is something where Shopify pride themselves on providing some of the best layers of security and encryption in the industry to stop people looking to hack into your data and remove your customer data from their platform. But to be honest, I know it does it. I can't comment on how it does it.
James, thank you. Guys, I'm keen to talk around sustainability. And actually, I know that Shopify is investing a lot in its kind of sustainability fund. It spends at least $5 million a year annually on the most promising and impactful technologies. And as if I couldn't love Shopify anymore, this is just taking this crush to the next level. But Shimona, perhaps you could tell me a little bit more around the great work you're doing around sustainability, as that certainly seems to be something that's only going to get bigger in the coming months and years ahead.
Yeah, this is really important to us, right? If we are going to build the platform for merchants to be able to build and grow their businesses, how do we make sure that we're actually making the world better as we do it? Our shop app actually is a really great story to be able to tell. It's, accelerated checkout that we've launched. If you don't have that app today, that's my current favorite app, is the ability to be able to shop accelerated checkout for all the best Shopify merchants to be able to track your shipments. And what we were doing is actually offsetting the carbon emissions for all of the shipments that are going through those Shopify merchants, which is so exciting. In fact, if you go into the app itself, you can take a look at your own profile and you can actually see how many carbon emissions that you've personally offset through your shopping, and how many trees that's the equivalent of planting. And so this is work that we're going to continue to do, and we're going to continue to expand on. Even, Toby Lutka, our CEO, personally is incredibly invested in this and spends a lot of time here. So sustainability from an environmental impact standpoint is really important to us. I'd say, though, the maybe on sustainability in general, because we have this conversation a lot, is of course, sustainability can mean so many things if you take a look at the UN definition of it. As brands are thinking about going sustainable or using that as a potential brand lever, to make sure that it's super authentic to you, that it means something to you, and you're not just using it as an acquisition metric or an attraction metric. Cotton brand is really that's a brand that I really, really love. They actually grow the cotton in these Egyptian communities in Egypt, and they actually provide proceeds from their sales back to supporting that community, whether it's schools or other resources for that community. And so they're creating this circular impact, which is so exciting. Even at BFCM, rather than discounting, what they actually did is a percentage of their sales got redirected back to those communities. And that's super authentic, and it's amazing, and it's genuine. And you actually, as a consumer, feel like you're having an impact on that cause that you potentially attach yourself to as well. Allbirds is another really great example with sustainable goals. So yes, we're going to continue to do a lot more here, but we're also really excited to continue to empower merchants to find ways to build really great sustainable brands in whatever way that's important to them.
James, we've got a little game coming up, which we're going to play yourself, myself, and Jay. But before we do that, I believe you just want to add something there around the tipping functionality within Shopify.
Yeah, so Shopify, very quickly, it has this function to tip. So it was built primarily for the hospitality industry, but actually it's great with the ability to just change the wording of that function within their checkout. You can turn it into a charitable donation engine. So therefore, bringing your sustainability and your CSR, your corporate social responsibility, directly into checkout for your customers, being able to add a custom value or 1%, 2%, or whatever percentage you want to ask them to contribute to a charitable donation. I think that's a fantastic piece. And again, that's something that you'd usually have to pay with like pennies or a solution like that, quite a lot of money to add into your standard e-commerce platform. So I love that. We're just about to implement it for one client in the next couple of weeks.
Very good. Now, Shimona, I know you can't play this game because you have to stay impartial and therefore you can be referee. But actually, James, Jay, and I, just a little bit of fun. Every time we do these sessions, we are always asked without fail, what kind of apps would we recommend? And so shortly, I've got a question coming around subscription. And actually, for us, when it comes to subscription, we're always looking at Recharge or potentially Bold as well. And so there's two we'd often use in that space. In terms of social proof, we always would look to reviews.io. Typically, there's plenty of others out there, but we've got a good relationship with those guys. We've also, Jay, you and I have spoke to them not so long ago, and that content's available online, and I recommend everyone checking that out. And the third and final one for me is around loyalty and how we can build loyalty. We've talked about loyalty today, and actually whether that be Yotpo or Loyalty Lion or any others out there, Smile.io, another great one. Check them out. There's some cracking apps out there, but my three would certainly be those. Now, I appreciate it's going to get harder and harder as we go down, so we'll leave the Oracle till last, and we'll come to you, Jay, next. What are your three?
You've stolen my three. I mean, it's
no!
What I love about Shopify as an e-commerce platform, but I mean, obviously I sound like I'm evangelizing here, but I like the way that even for our smallest retailers who may be only transacting, £10,000 a month, they are able to access all of these apps, on the starter kind of level. It's about consumer loyalty. It's about brilliant email integration. It's about all of these things being within the Shopify platform. It just makes it so much easier. So yeah, you totally stole mine, Nathan.
It's fine. We'll come to James, and there's a couple of others I'd chuck in if he doesn't, but I'd be amazed if he doesn't mention them. James, three from you.
Okay, I think you're going to be surprised, Nathan. So these are for people who ultimately are not starting up their first store, but ultimately just to make things super efficient. So the first app is Excel, the brilliant ability to import and export data through Excel through pretty much every single part of Shopify's store. If you're not a developer and can't open up Shopify's API, that is probably the best second route to go if you're not going via the API route. Second thing, orderly emails. Shopify has a great suite of notifications, they're called in the system, but actually orderly emails as a template engine, drag and drop, and then you can design your emails in a much more branded orientation without having to learn HTML, and then cut and paste that code into Shopify. That is fantastic as a suite, and it is super, super cheap to run and set up as a user. The third one is a tool called Codisto. Now, this is purely for those of you that are looking to connect into Amazon and eBay. Now, Shopify has its own integrations now for Amazon and eBay, but Amazon, unfortunately for us in the UK, isn't available. So if you're a UK store, Codisto link allows you to connect into your Amazon store and bring orders and product backwards and forwards from Amazon into your store directly, so you can keep that efficient pick, pack, and dispatch process as clean as possible. And yes, there's a long list of my arm in terms of apps I love, but those for me are things that help you drive efficiency from what you do.
James, I would have had my house on you going with a ShipStation or something like that. I've got Klaviyo written down, and Gorgeous, the customer service app, which I absolutely love. I can't believe it.
Sorry, mate.
Anyhow.
I'll meet your expectations next time, I promise, sir. Thank you very much, sir.
No, very good, mate. Very good. Thank you. Now, guys, I'm afraid I actually feel like I'm kind of sad, right? It's like a really good film that's about to come to an end. We've got 9 minutes left. So please, last-minute questions, keep them coming in. I've got a question for each of you, and Danny, this one includes you as well, around e-commerce in the next 12 to 24 months and where we see it going. And so, Jay, I know I stole your answer last time, and so I'm going to come to you first this time. Where do we see e-commerce going in the next 12 to 24 months, and what can we expect?
Everyone's talking about cookies, so I've got to talk about cookies. I think that being a responsible and ethical brand online, you need to be making sure that you're ahead of this and that you're being compliant, but that you're also not, your marketing isn't reliant on cookies. Really going back to the basics of who you are as a brand, who your customers are, and meeting their needs best. So it's the end of lazy cookie-based marketing.
Very good, Jay. Let's come to you, Shimona. Where do you think? And then I'm going to go to James and then over to Danny. And then back to me. I'll go last. Go on, Shimona.
No worries. Thank you. Great call out, actually, Jay. I'm really glad you brought that one up. To me, it's the year of experiences. And I really believe whether it's for acquisition, storytelling, loyalty, both online and offline, it's going to be about experiences and continuing to raise the bar of how we wow customers that we've attracted. So rich digital experiences, whether it's playing with and testing new technologies like video, AR, VR, or offline, creating really great experiences in store. Don't just be like stocking shelves in your brick and mortar. Create experiences, create events, play with pop-ups, play with, all different types of events and experiences. So I think there's a lot of opportunity for that, but it's going to be the year of continuing to wow and raise the bar for consumers.
Very good. Thank you, Shimona. James, over to you.
So I think there's, in my usual rule of three things. One is, I think we will start to see lots of local, smaller brands start to shoot up out of the high street. On Clubhouse, we talked about in the forest, large tree falls feeding these shoots that come out of the ground, and I think that's going to be very, very true. So aiming for local and lots of smaller brands emerging, I think is one thing. The second one is brands very much starting to use social shopping as a channel. I think social shopping won't just be 2021, it'll be ongoing, and it will be an accelerative channel. And that's something we need to pay attention of, and how we operate within it safely and comfortably and correctly. The last piece is playing upon that experience piece, starting to join up the data between the channels that we operate within. It's things that larger brands have been struggling with to do properly in the 80s and 90s and the noughties, and are only really now starting to get the power of what they need behind it. Smaller brands are able to do it from day one by operating Shopify POS and your core e-commerce store, and then with something like Amazon and eBay bolted into your store, you're now getting a complete picture of your customer dynamic and their purchase patterns. So those are, for me, the three things that enable a better shopping experience for customers in 2021.
Thank you. And Danny, I'm just crossing my fingers here. No one's going to say mine, and so far so good. But Danny, just don't balls it up. Go on, over to you. Come on, don't
experience again, but being consistent with your experience. I think from social, from social onto search, onto your website, onto offline. But then the extra add-on is offline conversions. I think there's so much that's going to be key from that, and pushing that back into using whatever CRM you're using, or whatever, whether it's an e-commerce or non-e-commerce, and going away from Shopify there. But I think offline conversions is going to be key, and they're the big questions that we're having with all our clients at the moment in time. How can we provide that tile company that's not had any of its showrooms open, the samples that have been placed on order have led to larger orders? How do we then match that up, and how do we drive the online attribution model and get that correct?
Thank you. And mine was around personalization. I know this has been a topic for a considerable amount of time now. However, in the next 12 to 24 months, I'm really excited to see where personalization is going to go. One of the apps I neglected to mention was Nosto, and I really like how we're trying to create almost individual experiences for individual users. And I'd love to see how, with the data we're getting out of these systems and tools, how we can really make someone feel like they are the only person in the room, or to make them feel really special. And everyone's so time poor right now to say, you know what, this experience is solely for you, and it's super hyper relevant. I'm really excited to see where that's going to go. So, unfortunately, folks, we're coming to the end of today's session. I think it would be amiss of us not to once again mention the upcoming sessions where we talk about Shopify Plus and the migration from Advanced over to Plus, as well as coming from other platforms and over to Plus too. And so 26th of March, join us on Clubhouse, where we do it all again, and we're looking forward to seeing many of you there as well. If you're not fortunate enough to have Clubhouse, don't worry. We'll be back on LinkedIn Live 6 days later on the Thursday, April the 1st, to have that very same conversation. Thank you all so much to those that have joined today. I hope you found it useful. Final thing from me is just a quick round robin. If people are interested in what you've had to say, or bought into what you've had to say, where can they find out more about you / get in touch / pick up the conversation? Jay, I'm going to start with the Launch Online team. If they're saying, yeah, Jay and Danny have come up with some fantastic points here, where can they find out more about you guys?
So LinkedIn, or go to launch.uk and sign up for our news.
Jay, thank you. I'm going to come to you, James. I know that when you're not bathing in all things e-commerce, you're also always open to chat. And so where can people reach out? Is LinkedIn the best for you as well?
LinkedIn, definitely one of the best places for me, or literally visit the Armoury.agency, and there's a link on there to book a meeting with us. It dials straight into our diaries. You can pick a time that works for you, and let's set up an initial chat to talk through any issues you've got, and happy to spend some time just talking through and chewing the cud. That's fab.
And Shimona, while I appreciate that we can't just be giving out direct contact, etc., the Shopify support community is absolutely fantastic, and actually something that we should probably shout out here. For those that have questions around Shopify, if they haven't been answered today, by Shimona, or you finish today's webinar and you think, oh crumbs, I should have asked this, do reach out to the Shopify support community. It's a fantastic facility. It's better than a lot of the other platforms don't have such support around it. So do make use of that, reach out. And like I say, please join us on our next session where we're talking about upgrading and migrating to Plus. So thank you all once again for joining us today. Someone's just asked, can we share the link to the Clubhouse event and LinkedIn Live? What I'll do is when this goes out, obviously this part is live, but it will still be available for anyone that's missed it. I'll make sure we put the links in the comments, both to the Clubhouse and to the next LinkedIn Live. And we look forward to seeing you all then. But once again, thank you all for your support. I hope you found today interesting, and we look forward to seeing you again. Take care.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks.